Hello and welcome everyone to College Football Corner. Alongside Jersey Joe Archino, I'm Anthony Carlo. Jersey Joe, another week in the books. This time we're in the radio booth.
Changing it up a little bit.
Changing it up, exactly. And right off the bat, one of the games that stuck out to us both, a win for UCLA, 38-20 over USC in a crosstown showdown. Joe, what did you find was the key to this win?
Honestly, it's quite simple. Brett Hundley. Brett Hundley had just an incredible game. I've kind of been waiting for him to have that standout game all year. I mean, UCLA is a very good football team. They've been very good all year. 2 losses to good teams. I mean, Oregon and Utah. You don't really take away from those losses because they're quality losses against quality teams. But I think UCLA kind of has been getting a lot more momentum as the season ends. And right now, it looks like for our Pac-12 championship game, it's going to be Oregon and UCLA. And, I mean, Marcus Mariota versus Brett Hundley, I'm all in when I see a matchup like that. It's going to be phenomenal.
Interestingly enough, in this contest, Brett Hundley's first pass was intercepted,
Yes.
or I should say early on in the game, for a touchdown. And what this was to me, Joe, was sort of a tease. I'm going to do this. I'm going to prep you guys for what you're going to think is going to be an off game, and then I'm going to hit you with 4 touchdowns.
It's pretty funny because you're 100% hit the nail on the head. A complete reversal. I mean, just that first play of the game, I was like, oh, God, here we go again, because it's been a little bit of my knock on Brett Hundley this season is we all know upcoming in the NFL draft, he's going to be one of the premier names. Marcus Mariota, Brett Hundley, Jameis Winston, going to be 3 of the biggest names we're going to be talking about when we get to the NFL draft. And Hundley, I didn't really see that standout game this year where I'm looking for him. And this game, I was like, here we go again. In the big game, not going to be able to really put together a very big performance, but you know what? After that, he settled in. UCLA really just took full command of that game.
I would definitely call that a big game. 326 yards. All their points they had scored in less than 30 minutes. And the defense did limit the Trojans to just 200 yards. So they move on, and as you said, as Brett Hundley enters the draft class, you could definitely picture NFL teams saying, you know what? We're gonna take it. We're gonna take a shot with this guy. You love to see a guy who can rebound so quickly as he did. I mean, early on in this game, you figure throws that interception, maybe that throws him off. But to compose yourself and realize, let me switch this into another gear and not let this bother me, certainly something special.
And I think it's all from head coach Jim Moore. I mean, Jim Moore has always preached toughness, mental toughness. And this is a UCLA team. I mean, I'll never forget the game against Nebraska last year where they're down big in this game. I don't know if you remember when their teammate Nick Pasquale passed away. They had that tragic accident, and that was a rallying cry. I mean, they were down huge against Nebraska, and they just came back and they just shut the doors, blew the doors off of Nebraska. This is a team that they draw their toughness from their coach. I think Hundley is just going to be a nice guy. He's a smart guy. He's got good athleticism. He's got a lot of good things going for him. I just want to see how he finishes off this last stretch because he could do a lot for himself in the draft the way he finishes off the season.
Well, Joe, looking up to this upcoming rivalry week, we still have the same top 4 as last week: Florida State, Alabama, Oregon, and Mississippi State. And we look towards rivalry week. We're going to begin with number 15 Auburn, 8-3, up against number 2 Alabama, 10-1. Now, the Tigers, they are potentially moving in the wrong, or I should say, they could potentially continue moving in the wrong direction, having lost 3 of their 5 real games, barely escaping in 2 wins. And now they go on to play Alabama. What do you expect from this contest?
I'm going to be honest, Carlo. I'm worried about the Auburn Tigers. I think Alabama wants blood. I do. I mean, last year, Auburn winning that game the way they did, just, oh my goodness. I think Alabama's real. They've got the game at their home now. They're coming into this game with a lot of momentum. Auburn's coming into this game with the wrong style. I mean, they're coming to this game not really 100% sure of themselves, really haven't been too sharp the last couple weeks. Did get a win, a confidence booster against Samford, but again, Alabama's not Samford. They're a lot better of a team. Auburn did win that game, so I do like Alabama to win this game. I think Auburn will show up as always. They've got a great head coach in Gus Malzahn, so it'll be a good game. It always is. This is a great rivalry in the Iron Bowl, but I think Alabama's just playing too well right now. Auburn hasn't played too well the last couple of weeks of the season.
Not playing well, but as you mentioned, and we know they do have a flair for that dramatic
They
ending.
do.
Moving on, we have number 6 TCU, who is at 9-1. They'll be pitted up against Texas, who sits at 6-5. Texas, definitely you could say getting better under their first year coach and the defense. Joe, best in the
Oh,
Big 12.
I mean, this is going to be a very good matchup here. Texas has been outstanding. The last few weeks of the season, if people haven't been paying attention, Texas has quietly been really pulling themselves together. Defensively, like you mentioned, they're outstanding. Charlie Strong, we knew he was going to bring a very good defense to the table. We just wanted to know what can they do on offense, can they improve, and they've definitely gotten a little bit more confidence on offense as the last couple weeks have gone by, but they've really come into their own now, beating Oklahoma State last week. I think this is a setup game. I mean, this is a tough game for TCU. These two teams, a big rivalry between them. And TCU, before they had the bye week coming into this game, which is important, but before that, struggling against the Kansas Jayhawks is very alarming to me. If you're going to struggle against Kansas on the road and then you're going to play a tough rivalry game like Texas, that's going to be a little bit tough. But Trevon Boykin, his athleticism is very impressive. He's had a very good year. Gary Patterson, this is the best offense he's ever had. I do think that they will find a way to win against Texas, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how Texas' defense can hold up.
And the Longhorns, as you mentioned, didn't put much of up much of a fight against Kansas State.
No.
And they did have a similar effort against Baylor. But it'll definitely be an interesting contest.
It will.
We move on to number 4, Mississippi State, 10-1, taking on number 18, Mississippi, who is sitting at 8-3. Now, Joe, the Rebels, you could say, looked finished Saturday, getting shut out against Arkansas to look to be to end any chance they had to win the SEC West. And how about the injuries they've endured, especially to one of their best receivers, Laquan Treadwell?
Yeah, that game against Auburn. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because I think a couple weeks ago this game was like a premiere. I mean, we were all waiting who's going to be the Mississippi team this year because historically these teams are generally irrelevant in the grand scheme of the SEC West, but this year both had outstanding years, so it's lost a little luster, but it'll still be fun. It's on the road for Mississippi State. I think you've obviously got to give the edge to Mississippi State to win this game, just with the way Ole Miss got shut out. But that also makes a good point. I mean, there's no way Ole Miss isn't going to get up for this game, especially off their performance last week. They're going to be fired up to really play a good game here. So we're going to get a very nice matchup here. I do think, though, Mississippi State right now, they will win the game. And it makes an interesting argument because if Alabama does beat Auburn like we think they will, and Mississippi State beats Ole Miss, well then obviously Alabama moves to the SEC championship game. If they win that, what are you going to do? Are you going to have two teams from the SEC West in the Final Four? I mean, based on the way they've played opponents, I think you could make a good case for it. We'll see what the committee is going to do, though.
Moving on, we have Florida 6-4 at number 1 Florida State 11-0. Now, Joe, Florida State has played 5 one-score games and 5 games in which they have trailed at half. We know that we've discussed this before. We know this team always sometimes looks like they're going to be down and out, and then they wind up coming back.
They play a dangerous game.
They
really do. They always play on they are become kind of the Darth Vader, like Kirk Herbstreit keeps on saying. I mean, he's 100% right. They're the Darth Vader of college football. Everyone wants to see them fail. It's always so close to having that moment, but they always find a way to win. I mean, even this week, the 20-17 win over Boston College, really struggling in that game. But as always, they find a way to get the win. And they haven't lost a game in 2 seasons now, and it's got to mean something. Now, this game against Florida is interesting because they are home. I think they are the better team, and they will win the game. But Florida's outstanding defensively. They're not very good offensively. They run the ball well, but they can't throw the ball. Treon Harris and Jeff Driscoll, disasters at quarterback. So I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. And if the defense for Florida shows up, which they usually do, and they can run the ball well, which Florida State's defense against the run hasn't been that good this year, we could have an interesting game. I mean, again, this is an SEC team. They're at a different level. Even we saw last year, I always allude to it, Auburn had the worst SEC defense last year. They physically pushed the ACC Florida State team around. Even though Florida is considered one of the weaker SEC teams, the difference between an ACC and SEC team is huge. So I think it's going to be a close game. But as we've always seen with Florida State, it might be ugly. They'll find a way to win, though. It's just the story for this team.
That's nicely put. It's interesting to see how a team can become so comfortable with winning. It seems like in 2 seasons, but yet not become complacent enough to lose a game.
Yes, and the amazing thing is, they really don't get off to good starts. This is a team. There hasn't been a really big game this year where they've come out of the gate and they've just looked like they've had it together. They've had to kind of regroup at halftime, make the adjustments, and they have made the adjustments. So I think we're all waiting to see, are they going to come out at all this year and kind of just start off right off the bat looking like they know what they want to do?
Moving on, we have number 3 Oregon 10-1 at Oregon State 5-6. Now, the Ducks, they have the number in this one. 6 straight Civil War games, Joe.
They do, and this is going to be a very interesting game here because Oregon State at home this year has been solid, beating a good Arizona State team at home a week or two ago. I think, though, Oregon is just playing too well. Marcus Mariota is my Heisman. He has been for weeks now. I think he's really set himself apart from everyone else. And I said last week on the show, that bye week was so important for Oregon with this last stretch coming up because Marcus Mariota has been on the ground a lot, sacked a lot, so getting a rest with everything in front of him. Oregon knows what the goal is. They beat Oregon State. They have to play UCLA in the champ game, and they're in the Final Four. So I think everything's in front of Marcus Mariota. He gets to rest up. This will be a tough road game, but I just think their offense is just too in rhythm right now, and they will definitely get the win on the road.
Marcus Mariota, definitely a gem to have as quarterback. But now, Joe, we finally move on to Michigan at number 7, Ohio State, who is sitting at 10-1 now. The majority says, Joe, that Ohio State takes it to Michigan by at least 4 touchdowns. Does Jersey Joe agree with that?
I'm going to be honest, I completely agree. I think it could be even more. Michigan has just been a wildfire this year. It has been a disaster. There's going to be change coming to that coaching staff soon. Last year, we were actually surprised. It was at Michigan last year, and Ohio State struggled. It was a shootout. Both teams could not stop one another. This is a completely different Ohio State team. They're at home. I think Michigan this year just doesn't know what they are, and it's just going to be a blowout. J.T. Barrett, going to be a lot of touchdowns for him adding to his count, and I think right now, it's usually one of the premier games we all want to see rivalry week, but to be honest, by the third quarter, I think most people are going to be asking when's the 30-30 game starting.
Jersey Joe, with us today for your college football analysis here on College Corner. We'll see you on TV, back on TV next time. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. As always, have a great week. We'll see you back here next time on College Football Corner.